I mean, what are we doing in our society? I want you to meet a couple of really intriguing people. The first one is Keith Campbell. He is the co-author of the Narcissism Epidemic, a psychology professor at the University of Georgia. Also, Kay Wills Wyma. She is a woman who has successfully shown that there is a cure if we identify the disease and dedicate ourselves to treating it. Her book is Cleaning House, a mom's 12-month experience to rid her home of youth entitlement. David Barton was on the show last night, and he said, Glenn, you're doing the show tomorrow. You have got to meet Kay. And I said, David, I think I have Kay on tomorrow. So I'm glad you're here. So Keith, before we delve into how to fix it and some of the stuff that we were just talking about off the air, can you take us through the study and what we're supposed to learn from this study?
Well, what we're seeing is, you look at these big expanses of time, and we're talking 40, 50 years, what you see is over time, young people have gotten more and more positive about themselves. They think they're better than other people, and that keeps going up.
Does this come from us saying, you are so special? You are special, and here's a trophy for you?
That's part of it. I mean, part of it's the self-esteem movement. I mean, we have a whole chalkboard here of
you want
reasons.
You want to go over and
I'll
explain
go to the chalkboard.
Go to the chalkboard and explain what this is.
Yeah, we talked about 4 big cultural trends. I mean, one being the self-esteem movement. So we have examples like with names today. Kids want or parents want their kids to have special, unique names. So we see it in the celebrities where their names are things like Blue Ivy or Inspector Gadget or whatever they.
Right.
That was close.
Right.
So we see the change in names, and what people forget about that is when we share the same name, we're connected to people. So I look at my father-in-law who just passed away, great guy from Brooklyn named Edward. Everybody's family's Edward. Eddie, Big Eddie, Fast Eddie. But they all felt connected. They didn't feel special. They felt connected. Mm-hmm. Now we want our kids to feel special. We do things in education, so we try to give kids self-esteem by making them feel special. So example is the I Am Special song my daughter sang in preschool. I am special, look at me.
Okay, hang on just so where is the line here? Because we are all created in God's image. We're here for a purpose. We have a special reason, each of us, but it's not better than the other person.
Right.
So how do we...
I think it's just saying I'm a person of value, I'm a person of worth. Okay. I have dignity. I count. I matter. Okay. But not I'm better than you.
Right, okay.
Not look at me. I'm special. Look at me. You will see someone special. I mean...
Yeah, got it. Got it. Makes sense.
Too much. But that's one of the balances. Self-esteem is good. It's not so bad. Narcissism, which is that over-the-top specialness, is a problem. And then we have a change in celebrity culture, the example we just gave, where we have, I mean, my daughter a couple days ago said, Daddy, why are rich people so stupid? And because she was watching TV and seeing these celebrities on television. And we have the interesting case of reality television where we take people who are narcissistic. I mean, we have data that the highest group of narcissism celebrities, which is a pretty high group, no offense, I mean, just that's what you get, probably get the same with professors, are reality television stars. And then we put them in situations where they have conflict with each other. Then we give them alcohol. Then we selectively edit it till it's horribly dysfunctional. Then we say, okay, here's reality. And you and I watch it and we go, this is crazy.
You know, I remember the first time I watched Survivor, I thought it was pretty good, but they learned after the first episode, it's to knife each other in the back.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That was the learning.
Right. I mean, I wanted to start a reality show where we take a bunch of people out into survival mode, and at the end of each episode, if you did something that caused someone else to be harmed, you lose points. You know what I mean? You have to have each other to survive. That's not being taught.
But that's how we were built. I mean, we have to do that.
Right.
You put me alone in the tundra, I'm going to be polar bear food.
Right. Right. All of us.
All of us would be, yeah. But that's not how those shows work. But our kids watch this and they go, I want a car like that.
Sure.
And you know, my daughter wants, I want a pink Mercedes. Well,
right.
Like not just a normal Mercedes. She's 8 years old. Then we have these changes in emerging media, the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all these things I think are positive. They can all be used for good ends and for bad ends. But what we find on Facebook with narcissism is these are the people who have the most friends. They have the most self-promoting, the most provocative photos. And so when you go on your Facebook account and you say, gee, here are all my friends, you're going to get a lot of narcissism out there, a lot of self-promotion. You can say, look at everybody's world, it's so special. Not mine. I feel kind of bad. You know, so it's like that Woody Allen movie where you're in the bus that's depressing, and then there's the party bus next door. It's an obscure reference, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Woody Allen is
little dated, okay?
Yeah.
I'll skip. And finally, there's been this giant increase in credit in our culture, and these all start, you know, and this is back to 1970, but it's exploded now. And I always think of credit as like your fairy godmother. You can be anything you want until the bill's due. And so we've had people buy houses, buy stuff they can't afford, and then you go, God, that person has this beautiful house. I want that house too. And you go buy it, and the whole culture gets filled with debt. That bubble collapses, and we should readjust, but we don't. You know, it should be one of those things like, take the tequila away. We had a big night, but now let's get sober and clean up. But instead, they dump more debt on us. So we've got kids today have $1 trillion in student loan debt. Non-dischargeable debt. So we're doing it. The government's now taking over the debt roll.
Okay, so what does that lead us to in the end? It doesn't sound like this is really good at all. Come on over here and sit down.
Yeah, I think when I started thinking long term, this shouldn't work. I mean, you shouldn't be able to have a society where people are famous for doing nothing, which is based on debt that doesn't exist. Where kids grow up and say, I want to be stupid so I can be rich. I mean, that shouldn't function for a long time. It should collapse, but it hasn't. And that's the real question.
Here's something that if you look at the study, if I'm not mistaken, things continue to get worse, even though we should have a reset.
Yes.
Should we not?
That's exactly what, yes. Just like in the Great Depression. You have the Roaring '20s, then you have the Great Depression, people get back to work, and you have the Greatest Generation. And we should have some sort of reset. Say, hey, look,
not.
It doesn't seem to be. No, I think what's going on, and I don't have data for this yet, but I think what's going on is a lot of people just moving to sort of worlds of fantasy to get esteem. Going online, trying to get esteem from something else rather than from their own work.
I want you to remember that because tomorrow we're going to talk about technology. And technology, just like all of this stuff, it's not, if you recognize that it is fire, fire is not bad. You need fire to cook. Technology is not bad. You just have to recognize the damage that it can do. This virtual world is really frightening to me because IBM said computers are going to be able to have all 5 senses in 3 years. In 5 years, realistic sex online with virtual people. And I try to think, how are you going to date? Why would you date? If I'm a guy and Ray Kurzweil, the head of emerging technology for artificial intelligence at Google, he told me, he said, Glenn, within 5 years, your computer will be able to read your mind. Well, if I can have my computer read my mind and I can design a woman that I can have sex with and have interrelations with all the time, when I come home, I just put the goggles on, why would I date? What an amazingly bad chore that would be. I remember what it was like when I was dating. It's awful. It's awful.
Well, and kids don't really have that opportunity even now because, you know, going off the technology movement with the texting and everything, that's one of the problems is the lack of interpersonal communication skills.
Correct.
Which leads to this narcissism. And, you know, narcissism is so far beyond self-absorbment, you know, absorption, because nothing works with a narcissist. They cannot enter into relationship because they can't think of anybody other than themselves.
So it is impending collapse. It has to, because the society cannot go on. You become psychopaths. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. This should not keep going. We should reset at some point. It should happen.
That could be bad.
Just don't see it happening.
You don't see it happening now at all.
Not yet.
No, but there's hope on the horizon.
No, there is, because I think more and more people are
really
getting it, and they're getting it more of like, look at those people over there. They're starting to say, ooh, what am I doing? What am I doing to help create this? Back in a minute. What amazes me is we are in a culture of fame. You'll be famous for anything.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be famous for being infamous.
Right.
And somehow or another it's good. We were talking about hope, that I think more people are waking up. I think people are starting to wake up that maybe it's in their own homes. And they don't necessarily know what the problem is.
Right.
Our children think that we are being stick in the muds because we didn't grow up with the technology that they have now, but we can see the damage that it is. It's a wrecking ball in our lives. And before we went on the air, I said that this last Saturday I went bowling with my kids. My older kids had not been bowling since they were 10. And as I sat there and I was bowling with them, we bowled for 2 hours, and I remembered bowling with my father and watching him bowl in his Tuesday night league, and we had a blast. And I thought, there's nothing more low-tech than bowling.
Right.
And we had a blast, and there's nothing that will replace that. We virtual bowl with Wii. It's not the same.
Right.
It's not the same. So what is the what's the secret? Because you didn't get it in your own life, right? And then
was I enabled in my life growing up?
Yeah.
Yes, I was. We had a housekeeper that came in every day. So believe it or not, yes, I would totally fall in that category. However, there was a big difference. We may have been given a lot of stuff. My dad was quick to say, you'll never have this. By the way, you are blessed right now. Don't expect it. And there was a work ethic that was absolutely required. We never did anything halfway. We never were allowed to quit. We never were allowed to think we were better than somebody else. And on it went. And our schedules never dictated our family. I sat many a night at the tennis court waiting for my mother to come pick me up, who said, you can wait or you can walk. I don't really care. And therein put the pecking order probably where it should be. We all were required to do things around our house. And the interesting thing about it is that when you're required to do stuff, you belong. Okay, so that video, as a mother, I'm just going to tell you, that crushes my heart, because those girls in that video are the ages of my daughters, and I watch that coming in and out of my house all the time, Glenn, and it's staggering, because right then and there is shaky ground for these kids, because they post that stuff and they look for the likes. And then they go and they research the likes to see who liked it, because apparently you can check your stream to see if someone liked you and if they liked somebody, and they're looking for this stuff. And so their self-esteem is based on that. It
validates, and it's not based on anything.
No, and that's so dangerous. Okay, so right there, as a parent, I can tell you I do not want that. Because I don't think that about my kids. Nobody does. You know, we really do believe that our kids can do anything they put their minds to, because guess what? They're gifted, and they're actually have a lot of talents, and they're incredible, okay? But when we race in and do everything for them before they do it, or we set them up for success because we love them, or we do their science projects because we don't want them to be embarrassed by the kid next to them, or we check every single homework because we don't want them to not get 100 because their buddy next to him is going to have 100, all in the name of self-esteem. Those kids know, and they hear an implied message, well, I can't do it. My parents wouldn't race in and do it for me, which is that implied message that, let me tell you, that one is super loud and clear. I think all the words we spew is like a Far Side cartoon, you know, the blah, 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 blah. And they hear the other so loud and clear. And it's one of those things, as you realize it, it's like, ooh, but can I let my kid turn in the science project without getting my hands involved? Therein lies the question.
You said to me earlier today that most, what is it, 50% of all...
Right, that's the latest study.
Explain this.
The latest study, which kind of would make all of our jaws drop, is that, because we would never imagine in your wildest dreams, is that 50% of the kids going into employment, their parents are involved. And you can actually back that up to colleges too, because parents are so involved in the college experiences, from doing the applications to buying the books and everything. And when they hit the employment scene, they can't stop themselves. And so they get involved. A third actually communicate with the human human resources department.
Oh my gosh, it would be fast track to hell.
Yeah.
You would never get a job with me.
Well, it's fascinating, and 3% actually have attended the interviews with their children.
Oh my God.
Okay, and so there are divisions and companies that are having to be created to handle the parents, and companies aren't stupid. They're gonna, you know, once those parents are involved and calling and saying, why didn't Joey get the promotion? Why aren't they in the office? You know, all these kinds of things. They have now started to involve the parents because therein comes your consumer. So why not just go ahead and embrace the change versus be as appalled as it clearly is appalling. But the saddest thing behind it all is that
I don't want to be successful if that's the way you have to be successful. I refuse to do that.
Well,
I told you, when you said that
yeah.
to me, I told you, my daughter, she works for the publishing division. Head of the publishing division said, I'm interviewing your daughter. Did you know that? And I said, she didn't tell me that, but that's great. Well, what exactly? I don't care. Hire her, don't hire her on her merits. I was uninvolved at 100%. She came in with a resume. I didn't tell her to make a resume. Nobody said, she didn't. She's the boss's daughter. Right. She comes in with a resume and she makes a pitch. She did it all herself. I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
And everybody should do that. You get it on your merits, not because of your station, not because of who you are. You get it on your merits. And if my company had to be successful, you know, to be successful, I had to work with those. No, I won't do that. I won't do that. Am I alone in that?
I don't know.
Probably.
I think so. But the kid knows too. That's the whole thing. That kid knows. And therein, you know, as a parent, what's the motivation to go swim upstream? Because you're swimming upstream. If you put your kid out and not race in and get them on the teams that they're supposed to be on, because if they're not on the right soccer team by the time they're 5, then they won't be on the select soccer team. And then if they're not on that team, well, it's so fascinating. But people really do care. It's
I lived in Manhattan.
This uber competitive, weird, peer pressure
kindergarten.
For
there's an application process in kindergarten.
Yeah.
and they will tell you, if you don't have your kid in the right first grade class, they will not get into this college. And you're like, I don't really care. I don't care about that. I mean, we are setting our kids up. What college is doing, especially if you do all of these things, all you're saying is check all of these boxes and then you are guaranteed this. So if I checked all the right, you were in the right kindergarten, you're in the right first grade, you're in the right 8th grade, you took the right courses. When I get to college and Harvard says no, then I'm pissed at Harvard and I say, wait a minute, I did all this. There's no guarantee in life. And so aren't we furthering exactly what...
Oh, yeah, you're building kids that aren't resilient. Because all they know is they're like chickens and you throw a breadcrumb in front of them, they keep pecking it. But when the breadcrumbs go away or there's 10 of them, they don't know what to do. It's like they get out of college, what do I do now? I've always been following one reward after another.
Have you looked at the studies at all and seen what's next after this? If this isn't corrected, what is the next step? What's beyond this?
I think that's a real challenging question, and what we're seeing now is this gap in our culture where people are becoming sexualized younger and younger. I mean, we just know that from the medical data, and they're hitting the markers of adulthood later and later. So now, you know, they're getting average marriage is about 27, and so we have this gigantic gap of adolescence. We talk about it as an emerging adulthood period or adolescence. Basically, we have a huge group of adult adolescents running around, and it's terrifying, but they buy a lot of products, so we like it.
Don't you think that the marriage getting later and later is because it's still about me? And the culture is saying there's something wrong with you if you want to pair with somebody at that age. Yeah. And then having fewer and fewer children because it limits your opportunities. It puts you got 4 kids, I'm at home, I've got the baby, I can't get a babysitter. And so why would I want to, again, it's about you. Everything that we're seeing is showing us it's about the individual and not about anything that's important.
Yeah, the other trend in there, though, to remember is a lot of this is women's education. And so women are becoming educated later, and that sort of puts the whole family off. You know, women go to grad school. That's part of it, too.
Okay.
But a lot of it is take care of me.
Back in a minute. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about actual solutions. And you were just saying solutions are very, very easy because they're everywhere in your house.
Yeah, and you know, so often everywhere in life, because narcissism, what is narcissism? Like the epitome of self-absorption. Is it good? No, because it's clinical, and it never can be good. Your life cannot be productive if you're completely focused on yourself, because you can't get outside of yourself, which is a problem. So enter in your house. You know, every house has tasks that are in, and this is what I found so interesting. I started our little experiment because I was mad at my kids. I was sick of them thinking that I was there to serve them. And you know, there was one too many dish left out and one too many bed left unmade. And I was frustrated as a mother, and I was like, it's over. You will now be doing everything. And it was about on month 2 when our kitchen, you know, I kind of said, you're going to do everything in the kitchen. You're going to come up with the meal, you're going to cook, you're going to clean. At that point, they ranged, the little one was 3 and the oldest was 14. So the 8-year-old was a tiny bit slow on the uptake, so he was the first one to have to do all the dinner. And as I took him moaning and groaning and complaining and yelling, "You're such a mean mom," all the way into the grocery store to everyone, because he didn't care, you know. And we started going around the grocery store, and I learned very quickly I had never shown him a grocery store. You know, I'd leave them in the car. I'd even hire a babysitter to come sit in the car so that I wouldn't have to take them in with me, because it was so much easier. I wish I was joking.
No,
it's
no,
the
no.
truth.
I'm just thinking,
because it was so much easier. Yes, it's easier. I get it done. It's fast. All the reasons why we step in. And then to watch that kid have an economics lesson at the butter, because there's so many different kinds of butter. Why are there so many kinds of butter? Why do they cost different amount of money? And right there, he started to own his experience. So by the time we were checking out, he took all of the groceries, loaded them onto the conveyor belt, used, you know, my money to pay for them. We got in the car, we get home, the kid unloaded our car, which I can't even begin to think of the last time that happened, without me berating them, get the stuff out of the car. And then to watch him clean the kitchen, literally cook, which for his age consisted of combining things, set the table, serve a meal in front of his siblings. So you had a whole lot of other-centered right in that moment, serving others, cooking for others, and then setting himself up to be judged. And who, I mean, seriously, your family's the worst critic, you know? And there he sat doing all this, and I've never, oh my gosh, I'd never seen him so confident or proud as I did sitting at that table. And Glenn, it was at that moment that I really had to apologize and say, I'm so sorry what I've been stripping from you every single day that I step in and do these things, because I love you, because you're too busy.
Can we come to your house with cameras and meet your children?
Sure.
Can we do that?
Yes, but you have to be ready to realize that we're real. You know, that
no, I know that.
It's not a past tense thing. We deal with it, but we're putting one foot in front of the other. And it's fun to watch these kids. It takes mountains and changes them from obstacles to opportunities. And that's really where they start to go, I can do so much more than I thought I could.
So Keith, where do you think I mean, in a bigger picture, or if you can get to the small picture, where do you think we start?
Well, I think 2 of the most important things are compassion and responsibility taking. I mean, those are the two of the big buffers against narcissism. That's exactly what you're, you know, instilling in your children by doing this.
Really,
by the way,
it's compassion for your mom.
Yeah,
have compassion for your mom.
It's a
for the love of
connection. It's in connection for the kids. I mean, it's just a sense of it's
great.
a connectedness.
Yeah.
It's a connectedness. I mean, I'm doing this, so I like that.
I know.
The other piece that people don't think about as often, I'll throw out there, is passion. When people do things they're passionate about, they're not doing it because they look good, they're not doing it to get attention or because they want to fit in. When they do stuff they love, when they're intrinsically motivated, ego drops away in the process. Sometimes we talk about it as a flow state. You know, you get skiing or swimming or surfing or something. So that's a real good buffer for narcissism. And the other thing I think is really important are natural consequences. The idea that setting up a world for your kid that when they fail, it acts back and they know it. So I go surfing, and whenever I'm out in California, and occasionally I'll get a big head and go, I can do this. I'm 18.
And consequence.
I get consequences. And I learn.
Yep. Okay. 2 books. The Narcissism Epidemic, Living in the Age of Entitlement, and this book will explain to you this is not just a rich person's problem. This is in the poorest of poor communities. And Cleaning House, 2 books. I hope you see why we're not talking directly about gun control today. We have to fix ourselves and our children first, or we're going to need a babysitter in a government to tell us exactly when they can and can't use guns, or when they can and can't. They'll have to wait for the first responder instead of being one.